Hello and welcome to the final submission webinar for the Solar Decathlon 2024 Design Challenge. My name is Taylor Ryan and I am the Design Challenge Competition Manager from NREL. I am joined by several of my colleagues here on the Solar Decathlon organizer team, including Nick Sindrich and Allie Georgeson. And today we will be walking through guidance related to the final stage of the 2024 Design Challenge. Starting with an overview of what we'll cover today, we'll go through competition timeline. Then you'll hear from Nick on some feedback from the semifinals jurors on your semifinal submission deliverables. We'll also go through the components of the final submission deliverable, some resources to support you and your team as you create that final submission deliverable. And then we will wrap up with some guidance related to the competition event next month in April. Starting with the competition timeline, we just wrapped up 2 exciting days of competition at the virtual semifinals event, where the jurors selected finalist teams to advance to the final stage of the competition. We also had 11 teams submit their exhibition team letter of intent by February 29th, so they will be joining those finalist teams at the competition event next month. Looking ahead from there, we have our next required deliverable in the competition due on April 2nd by 5 o'clock Eastern Time. That is the final submission deliverable. After that, all teams will be required to submit their 15-minute division presentation slides and 8-minute grand jury presentation slides by April 16th at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. And that will happen right before the Solar Decathlon competition event, which will be held Friday, April 19th through Sunday, April 21st. And we'll talk more about the competition event later in this webinar. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague Nick for some feedback from the semifinals jurors on your deliverables.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor, and congratulations to everybody who completed your semifinal presentations. We want to share some of the feedback from the jurors about your projects and those presentations. And at a high level, there's some opportunity here to prioritize some important areas in your continuing work. We want you to consider enhanced detail and justification for your project in the areas we're going to go through here. First is cost viability. We want you to be able to show that your project is well grounded in actual costs and capabilities. For carbon calculations, we want those calculations to be relevant and applicable to the materials and the quantities necessary in your project. For the building envelope, try to be diligent and detailed in your description, your envelope description, and the layout of your control layers. It's not enough to say that we're using continuous foam insulation. You should have a plan to detail how all the control layers work together to control moisture and temperature. The space conditioning systems should be described with actual specifications and capabilities as they relate to your building performance. Also, consider showing that you're able to satisfy your local building code. That's a big deal to show that your project is viable. There are a number of comments from the jurors that indicate that there's opportunity to utilize more passive design and active load reduction prior to the implementation of renewables. And related to that, there's definitely more opportunity and need to demonstrate adherence to zero energy ready homes and EUI requirements. Zero energy ready homes has some specific prescriptive requirements for envelope, mechanical, and plumbing systems, and demonstrating that those requirements have been met is important. And the same goes for the EUI requirements for the commercial divisions. And finally, just be prepared to defend the viability of your designs during your presentation and in your Q&A. Be up to the challenge to describe why you made the selections you did. And so back to Taylor for some final submission deliverable info.
Thank you, Nick. Moving on to the components of the final submission deliverable. You can see those components outlined here, and they are also included in section 6.4 of the rules. The first component of that final submission deliverable is an updated 2-page project summary. Then we have the summary slide, the design narrative, optional supplemental documentation, your team's 90-second video pitch, and 3 project images. And I'll walk through the components of this final submission deliverable in the next few slides here. Starting with your updated project summary, your team should have already submitted at least one project summary for the 2024 Design Challenge. So you will evolve this 2-page document to reflect your team's work on the final submission deliverable, and again, provide the competition event jurors with a concise overview of your project. Some best practices here include highlighting the unique elements of your project and what really makes it stand out to the jurors. Be sure to balance the use of text and images so the jurors can easily scroll through this document and find what they need to know about your project. And make sure that you're following the formatting requirements that are outlined in the rules, including keeping this project summary to just 2 pages. We do have examples from previous design challenge teams and their project summary deliverables available on the Solar Decathlon website, and you can access those project summary examples from the quick links on the submission site as well. Moving on to the summary slide. This summary slide will help provide a quick snapshot of your team's design projects to an external audience. So you can see that this summary slide template includes an overview of your project, the unique features, as well as the project's impact, including on its target occupants and the surrounding community. It's worth noting that per the rules, teams are required to use the template for the summary slide that we have available on the quick links on the submission site. So make sure to check that out, download it, and then use it to populate information about your team's design project. The next component of the final submission deliverable is the design narrative. This is the most significant part of your design project, and where you will really convey all the details about your design project to the competition event jurors. An overview of what is required to include in this design narrative, again, is outlined in section 6.4 of the rules. But to go through each component, you'll have your front matter, which includes a cover page, table of contents, and a list of tables and figures. Section 1 will then go through your team's design constraints and design goals. Section 2 will be focused on the contest narratives, where you demonstrate to jurors how your design project addresses the 10 contests of the Solar Decathlon. And then finally, you'll have the appendices, where you'll include design renderings to showcase your project, construction documentation highlights that outline the technical details and specifications of your design. And then finally, the energy performance documentation section, where you will demonstrate that your building is a zero energy building according to the design challenge rules. Some best practices for this design narrative: again, make sure that you are following formatting requirements as they are outlined in the rules. We also have examples from the 2023 Design Challenge division winners in their design narratives available for teams on the quick links on the submission site. So you can look through that and see how previous teams structured their design narrative and what type of information they included there. Please note that the jurors will read this design narrative before the competition event begins, so they'll have a good baseline and understanding of your project from this document. Moving on to the supplemental documentation component of the final submission deliverable, please note that the supplemental documentation is optional, but this is a place where if there were details that you could not include in the 60-page limit on the design narrative, you can optionally include them in the supplemental documentation. One thing to be aware of here is that the jurors are not required to review the supplemental documentation. So we encourage you to create this document with the guiding question of, is the detail essential to understanding your project? If it is, we recommend including it instead in that design narrative that jurors are required to read before the competition event. But you can use the supplemental documentation as a way to showcase how thorough your team has been and include some extra details for jurors should they choose to read this. Next up, we have our 90-second video pitch. This is a short video that provides an opportunity for teams to tell a story about your project and really highlight what is unique about your design. Again, some best practices here. Make sure you're highlighting those unique project features and make sure that you're making this video fun and catchy. The organizers will post these 90-second video pitches to the Solar Decathlon YouTube channel following the competition event. So this is an opportunity for you to showcase your project to an external audience. Last but not least, we have the project images component of the final submission deliverable. Each team is required to upload 3 project images that best represents their project. The first 2 are focused on design renderings or photographs of scale models that represent your project, anything that communicates around the technical details and the design itself. Then the third image relates to a team photo that actually represents your team, and you can see examples of those team photos on the left and right hand side here. Similar to the video pitches, the organizers will use these images to promote your design challenge project to external audiences. So think through how you want to represent your school and project and team culture in a creative way. So for the next component of the final submission deliverable are the 15-minute division presentation slides and the 8-minute grand jury presentation slides. Please note that these presentation slides are not due until April 16th at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. And you will upload those to a box link that is included in section 6 of the design challenge rules. You can also find those box links on the submission form of the submission site, but they will not be submitted at that same time as the other components of the final submission deliverable. So please be aware of that. For your division presentation slides, these are what you will be sharing with jurors during your 15-minute division presentation at the Solar Decathlon competition event. We encourage you to think through what amount of detail that you can reasonably fit and communicate into a 15-minute presentation. Try not to overwhelm the jurors with too much detail or too many slides, but be sure that you're communicating the salient points of your project to them through these presentation slides. We encourage you to create these slides with the guiding question of how do you sell your project and make it stand out and make an impact on the jurors. Next, you have your 8-minute grand jury presentation slides. We require all teams to submit these grand jury presentation slides, but please be aware that only the teams who are selected as first place winners in their division during the award ceremony on Sunday, April 21st, will actually present to the grand jury with these slides. One thing to be aware of is that these jurors on the grand jury have not actually reviewed your project deliverables ahead of the competition event. So what would you include in these 8-minute grand jury presentation slides to make it stand out to a juror who knows nothing about your project? Similar to the division presentation slides, these do not need to be submitted until April 16th at 5 o'clock Eastern Time using that box submission link that is included in the rules. Next up, we have optional posters and exhibits. These are optional items that your team can bring to the Solar Decathlon competition event if you're attending in person, that all attendees will be able to view and that you can use to showcase your project throughout the competition event. Please note that these optional posters and exhibits are not used as part of jury evaluations, so the jurors are not required to review these, but it is a fun way to show off your project in a creative way, and we'll have them on display for all attendees at the competition event to browse through. With that, I will turn it back over to Nick for some details on the final submission evaluation.
Yeah, so now some comments and facts about those evaluation factors and what you should keep in mind about how your project will be evaluated from the standpoint of the competition. You'll want to be sure to demonstrate a solid understanding and application of building science in your design among all your team members. You want to show that you've considered the relevant building science factors for the performance and the longevity of your building. Then there's the opportunity to demonstrate excellence in aligning your project design with the competition intent. Your qualification with the division requirements, the net zero energy requirements, including source energy considerations, and satisfying the criteria in each of the contests are all relevant factors in how your project is going to be evaluated. There are specific criteria in the rules that show how these factors will be evaluated, and understanding those factors will allow you to showcase how your project meets these criteria. From a perspective of operating in industry, you can consider these similar to client requirements, and your ability to meet and easily demonstrate that you can meet and communicate these requirements to satisfy your client. So do spend some time in understanding all the criteria and the rules so that you can showcase your project to its best potential. Next slide. And now some dates here and a layout of this full evaluation process. Your final submission, all that material, it's going to be due on April 2nd. At that point, jurors will have access and they're going to be reviewing that material up until April 16th. And then for the competition event itself, division presentations are going to occur virtually and in person at the final competition on Saturday, April 20th. Jurors are going to hear all the presentations and deliberate and pick first, second, and third place in each of those divisions and assign those winners. And finally, the first place division winners, they're all going to present separately to the grand jury at the award ceremony. And then the grand jury is going to select one grand winner at the end.
Moving on to some resources to support you and your team as you're creating the final submission deliverable. The first are deliverable templates. On the quick links on the submission site, we have deliverable templates for the design narrative, the project summary, and the summary slide. Please note that the only required template for teams to use corresponds to the summary slide, but the templates for the project summary and the design narrative are optional. These can really be helpful though in helping your team organize and align your deliverable with the formatting requirements that are outlined in the design challenge rules. So check out the quick links on the submission site for those deliverable templates. In the quick links, we also have examples from previous design challenge winners on their project submissions. So we have examples of past winners' project summary deliverables, as well as design narratives from the past winners. Bear in mind that the competition requirements have changed even just since last year. So don't take exactly what they're saying for word, but these examples are included on the submission site to help your team look at what a past successful entry into the design challenge looked like. And with that, we will move on to some guidance related to the final competition event.
Thanks, Taylor, and congratulations again to all teams for making it to this phase of the final competition event for the 2024 Design Challenge. As a reminder, the competition event will take place April 19th to 21st at the National Renewable Energy Laboratories campus. This event will also be hybrid for teams who cannot join us here at NREL. At the event, teams will give their division presentations, and everyone will have the opportunity to network with industry representatives and tour NREL. And finally, we will conclude on Sunday with our award ceremony. And we'll go over what this experience looks like for both finalist teams as well as exhibition teams in the next couple of slides here. Finalist teams will present their division presentations to an expert panel of jurors and will compete for division awards, division winner, and grand winner. These presentations will take place on Saturday, April 20th. Up to 7 students and 1 faculty member per finalist team are welcome to attend in person at NREL, and all other members of the team are invited and encouraged to participate virtually. Next, we are excited to have 11 exhibition teams join us here for the final event. These teams will finish and submit their final projects and will present to a separate panel of jurors for feedback at the final competition. These teams will also get the opportunity to network with their peers and industry experts. Up to 2 students and 1 faculty member per exhibition team are welcome to attend in person, and all other members of the team are encouraged to participate virtually. Your next step is to complete event registration. Registration is conducted through Whova, and it will be open until March 29th, and all team members in person and virtual need to complete it. If you are not a US citizen, you should have completed the Foreign National Access request sent through NREL. For those who have completed the FNAR, please note that this is not the same as event registration. We'd like to emphasize that everybody needs to complete Whova event registration. Next, you should review the Visiting NREL guide for details on traveling to NREL, and this guide will also include your hotel block details. Finally, please review the event agenda. Both the Visiting NREL guide and the event agenda can be found in the quick links on the submission site. Please email us with any questions, and we are very excited to see you at the final event.
Thanks, Allie. And now we'll wrap up with some important upcoming dates. Again, we have due dates for the final submission deliverable that is coming up on April 2nd by 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Please note that no late submissions will be accepted into the competition. Make sure that your team is prepared to submit well before that 5 o'clock Eastern Time deadline on April 2nd. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties with the site for any reason, make sure to reach out to sddesign@nrel.gov well in advance of that 5 o'clock Eastern Time deadline on April 2nd. From there, we have the 15-minute division presentation and 8-minute grand jury presentation slides due to those box submission links by April 16th at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. And then we have 2 last office hour sessions for the 2024 Design Challenge. The first will be held on March 26th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and the second will be held on April 9th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And the Zoom registration links and recordings of past office hour sessions can be found under the quick links on the submission site. Last but not least, we wanted to thank the sponsors of the Solar Decathlon, especially our gold level sponsor, Legions. Thank you so much to all of these organizations for your generous support of Solar Decathlon. We truly could not do this without you. For the students, we recommend that you look into these organizations, especially if you have not heard of them before. They are leaders in the buildings industry, and they will be at the competition event next month, looking to connect and network with you about career opportunities. So we encourage you to do your homework before the competition event and come ready to talk to these sponsors during that event, and especially during the sponsor networking session on Friday, April 19th. With that, thank you so much for watching the final submission webinar for the Solar Decathlon 2024 Design Challenge. If you and your team have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at sddesign@nrel.gov or solardecathlon@nrel.gov, and good luck.